Chapter 19 of Mental Fascination. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Cielocent. Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. And now I've reached the part of my subject in which I must speak of the power of the eye to convey mentative force. Owing to some law of nervous mechanism not fully understood as yet, the eye is one of the most effective mediums for the passage of mentative currents from one person to another. I shall not attempt to indulge in any special theory on the subject, but shall proceed to the description of the facts of the case. I may add, however, that advanced occultists inform us that portions of the human brain, during a manifestation of strong emotional effort or exercise of will, resembles an incandescent surface, glowing and phosphorescent, and that also there are seen great beams of this incandescent energy streaming out from the eyes of the person and reaching the mind of other persons. And more than this, these beams of energy transmit mental states, thoughts, etc. of the person, just as scientists have found that beams of light will carry waves of electricity and have thus been able to send telegraphic and even telephonic messages over such beams of light. Mentative beams of energy. One who has mastered the fascination of the eye is able to convey most readily to others the mentative currents which tend to produce similar mental states by mentative induction, as explained elsewhere in this book and in Mental Magic. If you will but remember the above illustration of the beam of light along with the electric and magnetic currents travel, and will form a mental picture of these mentative beams from the eye, you will understand the process much better, and you will, at the same time, tend to give to your own mentative beams a substantial reality along the lines of visualization. That is, when you wish to use these mentative beams, you should imagine them as actually existing in full force and reality. This will tend to give them a material reality, and thus render them a highly efficient medium for the passage of your mentative currents. The fascinating gaze. And now right here is the best place to instruct you in the proper use of the eye in what has been called the magnetic gaze, but which would be more properly styled the fascinating gaze. There has been much nonsense written on this subject, and in some of my own earlier writings I gave directions along these lines, which I'm now able to replace with more approved methods and later discoveries coming from the study and experimentation of myself and others along these lines. I am willing to improve upon my own methods as well as upon those of others. I have no false pride upon this subject, and if tomorrow I find that I can improve upon my work of today, I will do so and give my students the benefit of the change, instead of stubbornly sticking to it just because I had once stated a theory, fact or result. There is no standing still in scientific work. He who stands still really goes backward. A former method. The former instructions regarding the magnetic gaze told the student to concentrate his gaze at the root of the nose of the other person, that is, right between his two eyes. Now this was all very well, but there is a far better plan. This focusing the gaze between the eyes of the other person really results in crossing your gaze and thus robbing it of a portion of the direct electromagnetic power that it possesses. You may prove this by holding up a pencil before your eyes and focusing your eyes upon it as you draw it nearer and nearer to your eyes. The nearer you get to the pencil or to the other person, the more will your gaze be crossed and the effect impaired. A gaze from a pair of crossed eyes is not nearly so fascinating as one from a pair of straight eyes, giving out a direct, forceful impression. The new method. The new fascinating gaze is performed as follows. You do not focus your gaze at a point between the two eyes of the other person, but instead you gaze directly and straightly into his two eyes with your two eyes. You will find this difficult and tiring if you perform it in the ordinary way, and herein lies the secret. Instead of focusing your eyes upon his, as if you really wish to see the color of his eyes, you might so focus your eyes that you are really gazing through him as if he were transparent and you wish to see something beyond him. A little practice before a mirror will show you what I mean better than I can explain it to you in words. Practice at gazing through objects will aid you in acquiring this gaze. Try, for instance, focusing your eyes upon the wall opposite you as you raise your eyes from this page. Then as you look at the wall, slowly pass your hand before your eyes at a distance of about 2 feet, but don't change your focus. Don't see the hand plainly, but keep your gaze focused on the wall as if you could see it through the hand. How to practice. This gaze must not consist of a blank, vacant, stupid state, but must be intense and earnest. Practice on objects as above stated, and with your mirror will aid you in perfecting the gaze. It will help you if you have some friend with whom you can practice. The effect upon others. The other person will not be aware that you are not seeing him and are gazing through him. To him it will appear that you are giving him a very deep, intense, steady, earnest glance. He will see your pupils dilate as they always do when looking at a distant object, and your expression will be one of calm, serene power. It does not tire the eyes. And another important point about this gaze is that you may maintain it a long time without tiring the eyes and without the eyes watering or blinking. You may outstare another person or animal in this way without fatigue, while the other's eyes grow tired and weak. So much is this true that the results of my own investigation of the subject have convinced me that the animals who manifest the fascinating gaze, as mentioned in the previous chapter, really focus their eyes beyond the object in just this way. If ever you get a chance to observe an animal fascinating another, you will see that I am right in this theory. The scientific explanation. This gazing through the other person is accomplished by a certain accommodation of the eye, as oculists and opticians call it, and while you are performing it, you cannot examine distinctly or see distinctly the eyes of the other person, because your focus is different. To show you why you're able to maintain this gaze such a long time without tiring your eyes, I would remind you of the case with which you may maintain the expression of being wrapped in thought, daydreaming, lost in a brown study, just thinking about things, etc., with which you all are familiar. In such a mental state, you're able to gaze into space for a long time without the slightest fatigue, while a few seconds focusing your eyes upon a nearby subject will tire them very much indeed. And then again, you know how long you are able to gaze at an object far out at sea, or far across the desert, or far down or across the mountain without tiring your eyes. The whole secret is that short-range focusing upon an object tires the eyes much more than does long-range gazing into space. This being the case, it will tire you far less seeing through a person than gazing at him and seeing him at a short range. Rules for practice. In practicing the maintaining of the gaze for a long time, I would advise against tiring the eyes by gazing at short-range objects. Better practice at gazing at distant objects until you're able to maintain the gaze a long time, as you will be able to do after a little practice. In fact, I advise you to practice the gazing into space, because proficiency in that will enable you to perfect the fascinating gaze. After you have practiced this gazing through method a bit, you will be able to look at an object a couple of feet away and gaze right through it, and that is, you will not consciously see it objectively, although apparently staring hard at it. Make haste slowly. Avoid all exercising, tiring the eyes, and proceed slowly, working from trifling successes to more important ones. You will be surprised how a little intelligent practice along these lines will give you a penetrating glance, firm, earnest, and full of magnetism and fascination, without the slightest sense of strain, fatigue, or effort. You have long wished for such an expression. Here it is for you. End of Chapter 19. Recording by Cielo Sent.